Alright. So one thank you guys that did come. As you guys know, my name is Steve Soik. I work at I'm the sheriff, so I guess
You don't
I
have
only
to
work
just-
at the sheriff's office, but I'm the sheriff now, but well, I don't need that, they're recording. Do you need this? I boom pretty loud.
So do I.
Is that, oh, it's on and everything, okay. So as you know, I'm the sheriff of Stearns County, but prior to that, I was the commander of the Violent Offender Task Force, and I did such a good job that Jay looked up to me that he became the commander just like 2 weeks ago. So he's going to give a presentation on kind of the drugs that we're seeing here in central Minnesota. I know whenever I've done that presentation, whether it's for a group like you guys, or senior citizens, or whoever, it's usually pretty shocking. People usually walk away going, what the heck's going on around here? So a couple announcements though, also for anybody. We have kind of the rest of the season, if you would, our season that we do in the school year, set up as far as speakers go. So if anybody's interested, on March 12th, we're going to have Paige McConkey, who's a child responsive, he's from the Child Responsive Initiative. I know he works with the St. Cloud Police Department. He's embedded with the St. Cloud Police Department, and I know he came to some of our search warrants, and we knew there was going to be kids there, and it was going to be pretty traumatic, so he'll be here to talk about trauma-informed advocacy, assisting children and families who experience trauma. On April 9th, the next meeting is still kind of being set up, but we think we're going to try and get the State Patrol in here to talk about some positive decisions relating to prom. And on May 14th, which actually is National Drug Court Month, we're going to have a member from the drug court in Stearns County. So we have a whole separate court that just deals with drug offenders, first-time offenders, trying to get them on the right track, and a graduate from that program to come and talk. So if you're able to come to any of those meetings, maybe as the weather gets better in May, there'll still be snow in that.
It'll still be snowing.
Yeah, in May. So, but if you can come to any of those, certainly would like to keep growing our numbers in here. I know we recorded to try and get it on Facebook, and that's been pretty popular. And so what I'll do is just turn the mic over to Sergeant Commander, whatever title he wants to go by, Jay Salzer from the St. Cloud Police Department.
Thank you, Steve. This is the first time I've ever been asked to use a microphone. I'm a very loud person, but I understand. Like Sheriff Soik said, my name is Jay Salzer. I am a sergeant for the St. Cloud Police Department. I've been there since 1996, working with them. Most of my career has been in some form or fashion of narcotics enforcement. From the Gang Strike Force to the St. Cloud Gang and Drug Unit to the Central Minnesota Drug Task Force, now the Central Minnesota Violent Offender Task Force. I worked with Steve. Steve was my commander for some time, so we worked together. And I appreciate you guys coming here today. I know the weather is it not on? Oh, there we go. Got to get real close with it. I know the weather is not very nice out there. We all have long driveways that still need plowing, and sidewalks that need shoveling. So I appreciate you guys being here. I will go through this PowerPoint. I will show you some evidence here, not samples. So let's make sure we get that correct. But I like to interact, so ask questions. I rarely get through this PowerPoint in an hour time, and I appreciate that because I would rather talk to you one-on-one, get you your questions. What are you seeing? What are your questions? But this is my backup. I'll go through this. I'm going to show you what we're seeing out on the street. I'm going to tell you what we're seeing. I'm going to tell you how things are changing over the years. Like I said, I started my first round in the task force was back in 2003, I believe is what it was. So things have changed a lot since then. Sheriff Soik started back then as well, probably even before that, but I know he was in the Gang Strike Force as well. He can tell you some changes as well if you have any questions. Our task force, Central Minnesota Violent Offender Task Force, emerged in 2012. Right now we cover 5 regionals in central Minnesota. We cover Stearns, Sherburne, Benton, Todd, Morrison counties. We also have officers from St. Cloud Police Department, Sartell, Little Falls. Sartell actually, Sartell, St. Joe, Wake Park, and Sauk Rapids, they supply one officer between them. They share the cost and they supply that person. Right now we have 14 investigators on the task force. We have a big area to cover. As you can see, we go all the way up to Todd County, all the way down to Sherburne County in a day's time. So it takes us a couple hours to get to where we're going. This is the task forces that are all in the state of Minnesota. Everywhere except for these white, this is actually colored here, have task forces in them that are state funded. Now some of those, Sherburne County is one of them, they are in our task force as well, but they also have their own task forces. So in places where you may not see, and I apologize, it's kind of difficult to see up on the screen here, the different in the lighter colors, but some of those have their own task forces, they're just not state run. So the benefit of this is we have a wide variety of individuals we can reach out to and get information from. As you know, drugs are not localized in one area. They are moving. They're moving all around. They're moving all around the state, they're moving all around the country, they're moving all around South America. This is what we do. VOTIF, Violent Offender Task Force. On any given day, we're out buying drugs. We may do them ourselves. I personally have a hard time, but some of the guys, the newer guys who aren't known as well, they will go out, they will purchase drugs as evidence. We have people who work for us as confidential informants. They give us information. They can buy drugs for us as well. It's not just anybody we pull off the street and use. They've got to go through a criminal history. They got to be approved by our county attorney. There's a whole checklist of individuals we use that we work with. We monitor and document gang activity. There is still gang activity in this area. Not like it used to be, but there's definitely still gang numbers here. These are what we're seeing for the most part in central Minnesota right now. Cocaine is on the up. When I started back in the early 2000s, cocaine, crack cocaine, that was all we were seeing. We weren't seeing heroin. We weren't seeing much methamphetamine. It was cocaine, crack cocaine. It's changed. Times have changed. Cocaine has pretty much wiped itself out, and now it's coming back again. I mean, we've been buying it in the last probably 2-3 months more than we have the entire past 2 years. So it's coming back again. Methamphetamine is huge, large quantities. It's cheap. There's an abundance of it. There's a huge supply of it.
So is it still being made locally, or do you think it's being shipped in?
Everything we're seeing, everything we're seeing is coming south of the border.
So the meth houses that we used to talk about, those aren't
as far as producing meth, there's
Yeah.
still meth out, depending on, as far as manufacturing methamphetamine in the US, it is not cost effective right now.
Of course, they're good capitalists.
Correct, yes, they're, when I first, I went out to the DEA Academy in Quantico, Virginia, and I got certified as a clandestine lab specialist to take those down. When I first started back in the early 2000s, we were hitting several of them a week. The simplest thing is putting that pseudoephedrine behind the counter. It literally shut that off. It was like within a week. We're not getting meth labs. We're not getting these mobile meth labs. They're not happening. And today, they're at super labs south of the border, and they are producing mass quantities and good methamphetamine. I mean, we're getting chunks of methamphetamine we pulled up that was 7 inches long and about this big. And that's one chard, they call it, which is huge. Typically, we're dealing with stuff that is size of a pencil eraser. When you're seeing stuff like that, that is direct from a super lab south of the border that hasn't been chunked up, that hasn't been broken down, and it's made it into our community to get out to our citizens. It's sad. Marijuana is huge again. It's always been big, but with the legalization of it in the U.S., made whole new challenges, and we'll go over that. Mushrooms, heroin has made a comeback, and it's killing people hard. It's made a huge comeback over the last 5-6 years compared to what it was the previous 20 years. MDMA or ecstasy, khat, that's a typically Middle Eastern drug we see, pharmaceuticals and synthetics. cocaine, this is what we have here on the streets. This is what we're seeing. It's not cheap. That's the average statewide price that we're getting. So average is $286 for an eighth of an ounce. So you gotta have money to get this stuff. And what we try to do is, you know, Sheriff Soika talked about drug court. We recently got back on drug court, and we try to work with individuals who are addicted, who are trying to get over this stuff. And typically what they were dealing with individuals just with drug crimes. What we're seeing from this though is you may not get arrested on the drug crime, but you're gonna get arrested on the car prowling, on the cutting copper out of the buildings, on the theft from your backyard, from your storage shed, from the home invasions. You need the money to get this stuff. It's not cheap.
So is it organized? You know, we used to talk about coke. I mean, it's so expensive, so then you gotta get people addicted to it, so they'll keep buying it at that price. So is it organized along that line? Is it coming in?
I don't see the organization so much with the cocaine as we do with the methamphetamine, as we do with the heroin. Don't get me wrong, there's definitely organizations with it. We're just not seeing it in this area right now. I foresee it coming. You look at this trends nationwide and cocaine is coming back. So I see it coming on and up.
So that $286
Yep.
gets you how many hits, highs?
It depends, you know, an eighth of an ounce or an 8-ball, that's a good weekend for somebody.
Well, I'm sorry, all I ever do is see it in the movies.
Yes.
So is that like when there's one strip of it?
An eighth of an ounce is, or an 8-ball is probably this big, smaller than a golf ball.
Oh.
It's not real big, and it depends on your habit, how much do you use. What I'll do here is I'll pass out some cocaine here. As you can see, it's chunked up a little bit. This is not crack cocaine. Crack cocaine is cocaine rocked up. They cook it, they add some stuff to it, they can smoke it. Cocaine comes in many forms, and this is one of them. But when they go to snort it, like you're talking about, they'll thin it out, they'll cut it up, make it real nice and smooth so they can bring it into their system.
So are you?
How are most people using it?
Yeah.
Smoking it or?
Cocaine, yeah, they're smoking or snorting. So that's the majority of the ones we see.
And functionality of a cocaine user. Am I going to see them walking down, I mean, can they function in my classrooms without, I mean, it's not that addictive. They're not going through the heroin sweats and all of.
Cocaine's very addictive.
Right, but I mean.
It depends on where you're at on that chain of it. If you're a weekend user and you can function throughout the week without it, are you a person that needs it every day? Are you a person that now you're getting to the point where you need to shoot it into your system? They're all different levels.
Right.
I think the trend with cocaine too is younger.
Well, that's why I'm asking the
It's going
question.
back is kind of
Definitely.
from the 80s, the parties.
Right.
It gives you a high euphoria, you know, until it wears off. But
Or
I
until
think
it kills you, one of the two.
the trend across the country is to be is younger people. You know.
So are we seeing, we got quite a few colleges in this area.
Yep.
Are we seeing it on the campuses?
It's definitely there. Like I said, it's making a comeback. It was gone
Yeah.
for a while. Part of the reason is it's expensive compared to methamphetamine. Methamphetamine is cheaper. Heroin, super expensive. Cocaine, it's coming around. We're not seeing it a lot, but trust me, it will be here back again, like the sheriff said in the
We did buy
80s, the
some
party
at St.
drug.
John's.
What's that?
We did buy some at St. John's a few years ago. When
Yep.
we finished in college.
Yeah, well, we buy from college kids all the time. St. John's, St. Cloud State University. Anywhere you go, you're gonna have it. It's a stimulant. It gets you going. It's a high speed. It's very addictive, like I explained. Some of the street names: Blow, Coke, Soft, Dice, Hard Rock. You got them all there.
Can I ask a real dumb question, but it's
No
on the
question
bodies
is dumb.
greatly? Are you seeing it with high school age kids?
Our task force itself, we don't specifically target high school kids. So when you say that, when we get involved with the high school kids, typically from individuals like that, school resource officers, teachers. I have not personally seen it. We haven't heard about it. If it were to come in our community, in our jurisdiction, we'd definitely be hearing about it. That being said, I'll guarantee it's there. It's just a matter of getting caught. Nothing surprises me anymore. It's there. It's guaranteed it's in high schools.
So, can they smoke that in vapes?
Not that I've seen, not that I'm aware of.
Okay, I'm sorry, I don't know enough, and I just wanna know more, so.
Now, typically drug users are very, very
Creative.
creative. And if there's a way to do it, they'll figure it out. The biggest thing we're seeing in vapes right now is the THC oil, that type of stuff. I mean, we're seeing it coming over in the black market, loads of it, and with cartridges. We'll talk about that. Again, cocaine, this is what we're seeing the most, methamphetamine. This is the #1 drug that we're getting. We just pulled off 35 pounds of it a couple weeks ago on an investigation we had coming up through Arizona.
35 pounds?
35 pounds. This is methamphetamine right here. This has been beat up pretty good, so it's not a real good sample of what we're seeing. If you look at these pictures though, excuse me, these are very good, this is basically what we're seeing. It looks like your rock salt that you guys are gonna spread out on your driveway right now. It looks pretty much just like that. Those shards I was talking about, they were huge. They're big. And what's happening now is the super labs are making so much, they're pushing it over. We have individuals who have been working with us, who've been caught, that have been running large amounts where they want 5 pounds at a time. They're going to their source, typically south of the border or a border town. They only want 5 pounds. When they get it, they're getting 10 or 15. And the reason that is these distributors, these wholesale distributors are pushing it onto them to make them work more. You don't pay them back, you're in trouble. They have so much of it, they're trying to get unloaded. That same person we took that 35 pounds off of, we were just getting the runners. The people we were looking at were down in Arizona. We had the DEA working on them down there. A week later, they sent up another load. There's that much that they sent another load up. We ended up doing a search warrant and ended up getting that methamphetamine as well. There's a lot, and it's cheap right now. Back in the 2000s, if we were, never heard of buying a pound of methamphetamine. There wasn't that much. 2003, 2004, never, nothing like that. We were buying an 8-ball, a couple grams at a time. If we buy an ounce, it was huge. Nowadays, we're getting pounds after pounds after pounds of it. We just did last Friday night, we just pulled another 3 pounds off an individual in Melrose. So it's there, and there's a lot of it. This is what it'll do to you. Well,
You don't know what
join
it is.
us. Common street names we're seeing: meth, ice cream, speed, crystal, anything the kids want to call it, anything the dopers want to call it. Couple ways of doing it. Top left there, shooting it with a needle. They can snort this as well, and this is just ways they're smoking it. Once you get to the point of you shooting it, and you'll have a lot of dopers tell you, nope, I won't ever shoot that, because they know they're an addict. They're a hardcore addict when they're smoking it. As soon as they have to inject it, complete different world. They're done. You got to get serious intervention at that time in order to get it.
So, are they still smoking it in such a, used to be that when they make it, you'd have all that meth in the house, and if there are kids or anybody else, they're all becoming addicted to it, even if they don't want to be, because it's still there. Is that smoking as much as the danger to other people in the houses as we had it with?
No, I think what you're talking about is when they're producing it, when they're
Right.
manufacturing it.
Yes.
So this here, if you look at this stuff, this is fluff, it's called. This is what we're seeing when they're manufacturing. It's a different consistency, it's a little bit different. The smoke, I don't know of any addictive from it unless you were sitting right over it and you were sucking it in as they were exhaling it, which is very possible. But this is what we were seeing, like when you talked about when they were manufacturing it here locally. It's got its different consistency, it's very staticky, so if you were to put a plastic bag over something, it would come up, it would stick to it. They call it fluff. We're not seeing that anymore. I'm not saying it's not out there, I guarantee somebody's doing it. We just happen to be not seeing it right now. Couple more pictures of the meth. These are kilo packages, so typically 2.2 pounds is what we're seeing here. This is some evidence that we pulled off of an individual that was shipping it up to the U.S. Again, this is how we're seeing it, hiding in packages. We're seeing a lot of it right now through the United States Postal Service. Black market is, if you guys are familiar with the black market at all, or the black web, it's a whole nother different non-governed web-based internet, basically. And it's run by Bitcoin, it's run by different type of currency. And you're able to purchase narcotics through that. It's coming over through the United States Postal Service. So we've been lucky enough to work closely with our U.S. Postal Service. That's how we got the stuff Friday night. Just a shipment coming in, dog indicated on it, we delivered it. As soon as they signed for it, picked it up, we went in and arrested them. So that's how this came through. We're seeing a lot of it. More methamphetamine. This is just paraphernalia we see at wet search warrants, scales, baggies. They'll break off of the bigger stuff. They'll break it down into these small little baggies, these stamp-sized baggies, and they'll sell it that way. Pipes, lithium, tinfoil. This is what we are seeing to help produce this stuff when they were producing it here locally. Smaller baggies as it's broken down. This is street level stuff out on the street. This is what if your kid's probably gonna try it, if they're hooked on it, if a friend is, this is what you're gonna see. If you see these laying around, what else would you have stamp size baggies? Look for that stuff. Secrets of manufacturing it. More paraphernalia we find at search warrants that we go into. This is what you can still get Sudafed over the counter as long as you sign for it, and it's limited. So a lot of times what they'll do is if they are producing it, they'll get numerous people, each of us in here, you'll get a little bit of the product. When it's done, you go pick up 4 packages of the Sudafed so we can use it for manufacturing.
They used to shoplift the heck out of that.
Yeah.
Before they went on the counter.
Anhydrous is what we see again when you're talking about manufacturing it. And I'm just going to touch quick on this because I don't want to bore you. But anhydrous, it's a fertilizer. They would put it in these 20-pound containers, use it in the manufacturing process of the methamphetamine. Excuse me. This is a search warrant. These are photographs we see from a manufacturer. That's us when we're geared up. Stuff is so toxic. Marijuana, this is what you're going to see with the kids nowadays, and pretty much every adult that I deal with outside of marijuana, this is how we're getting it. This is how it's coming over, again, through the mail. We're buying big 1-pound packages like that. This stuff here, very seldom do we see anywhere. This is called commercial grade. Basically from Mexico, it's put into a trash compactor, smashed tight, shipped up here. Again, it's the commercial grade stuff. The good stuff is what you're seeing right there. The buds, that is what we're seeing. We're seeing it grown here in the United States, shipped through different mail carriers to its destination.
So what impact with Colorado and Washington or whoever, the other states that are starting to legalize it. What impact is that making on availability in states where it's not legal?
It's opened the door, it's a
Yeah.
floodgate. I know several individuals who live in Colorado, my brother being one of them, he's a chemist out there. When they legalized it, he lives near Fort Collins, when they legalized it, he saw a flood of individuals coming in. A lot of them street people, a lot of them people that are moving there just for the purposes of having legalized marijuana available to them. The problem they're having, and the problem all these other communities are having, if you look into it, you study it, is one, what is the effect on this on your unborn child? If you're smoking marijuana and you're pregnant, what is the effect you're gonna have on you? There's not a lot of information out there, there's not a lot of public service announcements out there to educate individuals on that. So what's happening is their healthcare system is getting overwhelmed. I heard a study just the other day that for every $1, if the state of Minnesota were to legalize it, every dollar they were to take in from the profits of that, it would cost the state $4. That's from law enforcement, to healthcare, to education, to social services, to everywhere else.
I don't know if you noticed, there's a pending bill in the national legislature to legalize it nationally.
Yep.
So that's why I was asking those
Yeah.
questions.
In my opinion, and I don't care either way, in my opinion, it's coming. I just hope to heck that we educate people on it, that we get ahead of it before we legalize it, and we understand, and people understand the consequences of it. Common street names, you guys have probably all seen it. And heard it. The seeds up there, people will import seeds. They're looking for good genetically made seeds. It's like a farming operation. If you know a farmer, they're not just going out and getting any regular seed to plant. They're going to get the best seed available they can to get the best genetics for their soil, whether it be resistant to drought, resistant to too much water, resistant to pests, whatever the case may be. People are doing that now, and they have been for quite some time, to marijuana. And you get somebody who's really into growing it, it's interesting talking to them.
But the old days of people, we're worrying about some farmer in the back 10 acres there having plots. You're not doing any of that stuff, that's all gone.
We still do, in the springtime or in the fall time, we'll do flyovers of different areas. Marijuana, the plant, the hemp you get from it, it is very cold resistant. It's a very hardy plant. So in the fall, when the corn and the soybeans and everything else is turning brown, you'll see in the middle of a cornfield, you'll see 2 acres of solid green. Well, it's because it's marijuana. So we still do flyovers, we still do look at that, and we still get quite a bit. Paraphernalia for smoking your marijuana. This is a grow we found. These are just starter plants, small little plants. And the interesting thing, when Leslie and Steve probably started as well, taking down homegrown marijuana plants like this, or dispensaries, or whatever the case may be, where they're growing it in their house. We didn't realize at that time how bad it was on our lungs to take these down. They're saying now that the methamphetamine labs are easier on our persons than one of these marijuana homegrowns are, because of all the molds and stuff that in this moist, hot environment that is created. We're in there without masks on. I did it many times without masks or anything, and we're pulling these plants left and right, shoving them in garbage bags, taking them as evidence, bringing them back to the police department and the sheriff's department, and dealing with them. So there's a lot more to this stuff than just, hey, let's have a good time, smoke a little weed. Again, some of the stuff we see around here in our community, Sartell being included. That's what it's looked like just before it starts to bud. That's some of the bricks we get. It's coming through the mail, they'll mask it, they'll put it in plastic, they'll put axle grease around it, then they'll shrink wrap it, then they'll seal it again, put dryer sheets around it to try to mask the scent. And they're getting good at it. Marijuana wax. Obviously, it's from the marijuana. I have a sample of it here, not to test, to eat. But what they'll do is they'll make this from the marijuana itself, and it's a very potent form of it. They'll dab it on something, on a hot item, it'll smoke up, they'll be able to smoke it. The process of making it, you can use butane. I'm not gonna explain how it's exactly done, but it's put in a press more or less. You put butane in there, you press the marijuana, the leaves, and coming out of it, you'll get marijuana wax. Very, very high potency. Right here, wax can have up to 90% THC content, where plant marijuana normally has 16 to 20. So it's dangerous.
So this is what's in vapes, when kids are, or anybody smoking.
It can be, yep, it can be, yep.
And is it always this color?
No, no.
And does it still smell as a wax, like pot smells, or does it?
The vape, this would here, but the stuff that, if you're getting the oil and stuff in the vape pens that you're ordering, you know, from the black web, that stuff doesn't have as strong odor as the typical marijuana smoking oil.
So Adam, that's not what we can, that's not our wand. That would measure that?
What do you mean by?
Don't we have a wand that we're
Yeah.
using? So does that does that show?
Well, I mean, the wand will detect the smoking device.
Right.
And then it's up to actually testing the oil. And I was gonna ask, can you make test the oils?
Yep.
The juice?
Yep, you should be able to Nick test that, and the wax.
I'm sorry, what's Nick?
It's a field test we have. It's just a brand test that we use. It's a field test to see if there is THC in it. It tests the THC in it.
Okay.
So now that it's being put into the oils and the juices,
Right.
that can be tested
Okay.
to see if it's THC.
Here's some more. This is typically how we find it, little glass jars like this. I don't know why. But pretty much every time we see it, it's in a small little glass jar. You see something like that, or in a little rubber ball with a slit on it is what we're seeing. But as you can see, this looks different from what I'm passing around there. If you see a dark substance like that, and there's no other reason for it to be where it is, it's in your kid's backpack, it's in, you know, whatever, wherever you find it, be aware of it, think about it.
So before you go on, it seems like your role is the reactive role and not necessarily the preventive role. Which,
No, we do a lot of preventative stuff.
okay, so that
Yep.
would be my follow-up question.
Yep.
So then what has worked in your area as a preventative measure so that we get
To which point?
to whatever, drugs, marijuana, whatever you talk
I guess somebody using it?
prior to that?
So what is our preventive role to keep somebody off from using it?
yeah.
Well, police officers in general, yes, our goal is to enforce the law. So if you look at it that we are not social workers, we are not, but right here today, in my opinion, this is part of our education. We do a lot of talks, we will sit down, we get a lot of calls from parents, hey, I think my kid's starting to go this way, started drinking, started doing this. We open it up, we will go, we can talk to them, but majority of it, we're not just reactive. We go out there prior to it. Our main goal is the high distributors. We have other people in our community, in St. Cloud and other places that work the smaller stuff. Our goal is to get the big distributors, the 35 pounds coming in, the 15 pounds coming in, the source that's sending up numerous pounds of marijuana from California or Nevada or whatever the case may be. But we're not strictly just reactive. The point of getting these high distributors, the major distributors, to slow. Will we ever stop it? No. We're not living in a world of.
So it's a different function in terms of the task force, because I would argue that Adam and Jill and Robbie are probably as much social workers at times as our SROs.
As are we.
Yeah,
But
but that's what so I think what we're asking, because we want it out of the schools with everything, so what recommendations do you have for us to help not get kids on it? Obviously, it's good to get this.
education, being what you are here today, teachers, principals, superintendents, you can't bring the kids into school for how many hours a day and have that effect if there's no home effect. You gotta educate the parents as well as you do the kids themselves. When I go to conferences every year, I tell my teacher, I don't expect you to teach my kid hardly anything. I expect the communication at home, so when I can sit down with my kid at the dinner table and after the dinner table, I can run through the mathematics, I can do the reading. And when you're in school, you polish it. I look at the same thing with us as teachers with these kids. Teachers can't do it alone, cops can't do it alone. Yes, I understand, I have many friends who are teachers, and I know that they are social workers. They are parents, they are teachers, they are law enforcement to some degree, they are everything, as are we. But our primary function is the high-end distributors, not the small ones. And when you asked about schools, typically we work directly with the school resource officers. We're not doing these large investigations on children. If we find something happen and they're under the age of 18 and we have information, they're bringing drugs into school, our number one is to see if there's a school resource officer there, contact them. Now, do we go to this principal? Do we go to the parent? We're not gonna do an investigation where we're gonna go try to purchase drugs from them, even if they're selling. Our goal is to catch them at that point, educate them, educate the teachers, educate the school on what's happening, and then deal with it that way. So it's a huge role. There's not just one role with the Violent Offender Task Force, but yes, our number one goal, the high-end distributors. I don't know if that answers your question.
Perfectly.
or-
Before we move on from the wax, like that stuff's really dry, is it typically released?
Yeah,
Earwax.
It really does look like
Go ahead,
earwax,
Leslie.
that's,
It looks like earwax.
looks like
And
earwax.
in the, when it's in the vape cartridges, it looks a little bit more liquidy than that. But, yeah, it's gooey, that stuff's pretty old, I think.
Yeah.
It was home cooked up. But yeah, the stuff normally, or we've seen more recently is, more gooey and looks more like earwax than like the pictures than like the stuff that.
so if there is that kind of substance in the vape, there's not something else that that they could argue that it is.
If you're finding something sticky gooey in there?
Yeah.
It's not-
I mean, that's
yeah.
gonna be pretty tough to.
I mean, that's a pretty telltale sign, right? That's what
Yeah, like you
that's
said,
what I'm at.
not definitely with e-cigs and the
Yeah.
cartridges to know what else, but.
If you, I would assume if you're smoking regular vape out of a vape pen, you're gonna have, there's gonna be some residue in there, if that's what you're asking. Again, I don't smoke them, I'm not very familiar with them, but I do know they get dirty and that there
We're
is-
just trying to find, we had a good presentation 2 months ago about that, and learned a lot, so that's what we want.
So, I mean, like, my question about like vapes, I mean, when they were the older ones, the hard battery size ones, they had the coils.
Talking hookahs or
No.
the actual vape?
Now, with the ones that are the Sorens, the roll badges, the jewels that are smaller, do they still have to have a heat source in them?
Yes.
My understanding is you have to, how, it needs a vent system.
Can you get to the coils like the bigger, the older ones?
I don't think in the smaller, like, disposable ones, I don't think it's all enclosed.
Okay.
Um,
Because like the bigger ones, you used to be able to just unscrew it, and the
Yep.
coils were right there.
And there's no smell. Yeah.
Unless it's like the same flavor one, I can really,
Right.
but most, more than likely it's masked to the fact that it's changed.
So it's hard to tell.
Yeah, I mean, I know that's what we're struggling with, so that's why I was asking.
So,
I mean,
your
you
newer
don't
ones,
allow it on school grounds, do you?
No,
So what are you seeing here, I guess is my question.
well, we're seeing vapes.
On school grounds?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
it's a,
So they're able to.
Those folks down there can tell you that story real well.
I mean, whether it's THC in it or anything else, they can't legally have it on school grounds.
Yeah,
correct?
oh, yeah,
So take it.
we are.
And then.
But you ought to be amazed that you think those drug dealers are good at hiding
Oh,
stuff.
no, I agree.
High school kids can be very creative.
What I
Well,
wouldn't be so concerned at that point is what's in here. Yes, afterward, the good thing is you can take it. You can hang on to it, you can contact the parent. You got resources throughout the community to call to help you guys decipher whether it is THC in there. Is it regular vape or what is it at that point? Shrooms, yeah, I'll let you guys say that because I'll screw it up for you. But we're still seeing these again, typically amongst college kids, the younger kids. It's a hallucinogen. We still see people growing them. We do quite a bit where we'll go in. And it's typically tied to, it's not tied to your your methamphetamine, your cocaine, your heroin users. It's typically tied to your marijuana users. This is a pretty good sample. They're getting crushed up pretty good, but you'll be able to see what they look like in there. And this is exactly how they look like when they're growing. This is the dried stuff here on the right, and that's freshly harvested shrooms. That's the package of them, basically, exact same thing that's passing around. So if you see that, it's not an oregano, it's not their protein powder or anything like that. It's something to be concerned with.
And they,
and those are typically, that's oral. right?
Yep, chew it up, swallow it.
oh, it's a chew?
They eat it. It's not a chew. They'll chew it and then they'll swallow it.
No idea of that.
Yeah. Heroin, this is what is coming up. You guys, obviously, unless your head's been in the ground, you've heard about it. You've heard about heroin in the community. You heard about what it's doing to people. Last weekend alone, just in the city of St. Cloud, I get contacted every time we have an overdose for the city of St. Cloud. Last weekend alone, we had 4 overdoses of heroin. That's one weekend. We're seeing it both this way in balloons and basically, I don't have a good sample of it, but it looks like a brown powdery substance. These are the balloons, and again, I apologize for the sample, it's not a very good one. But that's where you're seeing the small stuff being sold on the street. The newer users will buy it in small amounts like that. The problem we're seeing with heroin is the supply. The supply it's somewhat limited, so it's rising up the prices. When somebody brings the heroin into our community, it's being sold instantly. So for us to do search warrants on it, it's difficult. We gotta be on top of it. We gotta keep going on it because if we wanna get that evidence of it at their residence, we gotta be right on top of it. Heroin is definitely a killer, and what's in it typically is fentanyl, or carfentanil. Carfentanil we're not seeing a lot of, we do get, but what it is, it's basically a tranquilizer. It's cheaper than pure heroin. So people will add fentanyl to heroin. This is basically what we're seeing. You see little chunks like that? That's how we're seeing it. But like I said, everything we're seeing, everything that we get tested at the VCA has fentanyl in it right now. So if somebody will get, a high-end distributor will get a kilo of heroin in. We had a big investigation this summer where that's what they were doing. What they'll do is they'll get that 2.2 pounds in, or whatever the case may be. They'll buy and they'll get fentanyl, which is a lot cheaper. They'll add it to it, or they'll add it to it when they're producing it, wherever it's being produced at. And it makes you 2 pounds, now 4 pounds for half the price as the 4 pound would be. Narcan, if you guys want a good stock tip, invest in Narcan if you can. Everybody's using it now. Cops carry it. 3 years ago, I don't know a cop that carried it. Now every cop carries it. Not simply for the public, but for ourselves. We're going into these houses, same with teachers. You don't know where those kids have been. You don't know what's going on at home. You come into work, they come into your school, you have contact with this stuff. All of a sudden they go down, you don't know what it is. We're dealing with this stuff. If we get it into our system, there's story after story if you go on the internet about first responders going down because of this, and Narcan saving them. People can buy Narcan, they can get it through the doctor, these addicts use it. Not too long ago, prior to me coming to the task force, I was supervising the road. One story I'll tell you on how addictive this stuff is. One individual, ex-Marine, out of the military, became addicted to heroin, and he used it. And he calls his buddy up and says, hey, I just used some good heroin, come check on me if I don't get a hold of you in 20 minutes. He had Narcan sitting next to him. Unfortunately, his buddy that he was calling didn't get the message until about 3 hours later. We get there when his buddy gets the message and runs over to his house, finds him dead on an overdose there. You gotta think about how addictive this stuff is. If you're calling your buddy, hey, Scott, I'm gonna use this. I know there's a very good chance I'm gonna die from it, so can you come and check on me? How addictive is that drug? I mean, it's sad. It is very, very sad.
Alan, do you have Narcan as a school resource officer? Do you carry it?
Well, there patrol does. Which, we're doing our first responder now, and I brought it up, it'd be nice to have it in school.
So when we do searches, Officer Jill told us to wear gloves. Doesn't matter what kind of glove, just to prevent getting carfentanil.
Yeah, any latex type.
Yeah,
glove
any
or-
kind will do it, doesn't have to be
Yeah.
special.
No, it doesn't have to be special.
So if it's a prescription opioid rather than,
Pardon me?
if it's a prescription opioid, that's the same thing that we're talking about, right?
No, heroin's different.
So it's just more pure, isn't it?
Well, I don't know the exact.
But isn't it the
chemical
same-
composition.
But
It's a
isn't that,
derivative of it. Yes,
right,
it's a heroin.
because that's what we're saying.
Yes.
We've got millions of people in our country who potentially are addicted to some form of that.
To an opioid.
Right.
Yep.
So tell me the difference again so I can make sure I understand the difference between an opioid and heroin.
No. Well, your opioid is, what you're seeing as far as prescription is doctor prescribed. You're
Yeah.
not gonna inhale it, you're not gonna, unless you typically try to ingest it. So if it's in a pill form, you're fine.
But I'm still getting the same thing out of it because the people that,
Not necessarily, it's time released. A prescription is typically a time release type pill that isn't gonna have your strong effects, boom, straight into you like this. This is not time released. This is straight heroin going into your
Okay.
system. I don't know, you're asking me chemical,
well, I'm asking you from more of the press is talking a lot about opioid abuse, you know,
Yep.
the president's made that a #1 goal. But isn't opioids a derivative of heroin? Aren't we talking about
yes, it's all the exact same.
the same stuff, right?
Yep.
So don't we use Narcan on somebody that is,
If they overdose on it, you can.
yeah.
Yep, If they overdose on it, you can. But typically, the only way they're gonna have to take a large amount, it's time release, or they're gonna have to break it down, they're gonna heat it up, put it in a needle, they can inject it. There's different ways of.
Or they can't get the prescription anymore and they buy the heroin instead.
Correct, and that's what it leads to.
Yeah.
So what you're talking about,
The other thing with heroin is you start to mix it with stuff that you're making it.
yeah, yeah, the heroin is mixed with the carfentanil and fentanyl, which is a lot, that's what's killing the people. Not so much, I mean, the heroin is, but when they get that carfentanil and that fentanyl in them, that's what's killing the people. And that's not in your prescription drug. I'm not saying they can't overdose on it, they can't die on it, but that's what's killing all the people from the heroin.
Can I ask you some what? And the reason that's getting in there is because they're breaking it down in order to produce one.
Yep, correct. It's a lot cheaper than actual getting the heroin itself, so they'll mix it into it, it's called cutting it. So on the left here, that's heroin heated up. That's what they're talking, what I was talking about, they'll heat it up, they'll add a little bit of water to it, they'll put it into a needle, shoot it directly in their vein, and it goes straight into their system. This is some ways we're finding it, the powder. These are the balloons I was talking about. It's just a bunch of different forms that we see it. Paraphernalia used with it, different needles, spoons. They'll put it on a spoon, they'll bend it over, they'll add a little bit of water to it, put it in a needle into their system.
When you first showed the slide with the balloons, I always imagined like a marble size, but then when we passed it around, they're super small.
Yep.
Is that typically going to be that super cute thing?
Depends. And there's different sizes. Just like you go buy, sugar, it comes in different sizes. It depends what they're selling it for, how much they're selling it for. But yeah, you'll find it very small, single usages, which typically a balloon is, to larger quantities where I have that chunk there. Oops, sorry. Right here.
Is it powdery?
It can be, yeah. There's typically two types. There's the regular heroin, then there's tar heroin. Tar heroin, you'll see, is a little more gooey, a little more consistency of a gel, gooey tar. And then you have regular heroin, which they just call it H or whatever, smack, whatever. And it looks like a chalky substance right there. And then once they break it down, to be honest, a lot of times we'll look at it, we don't know if it's cocaine, if it's heroin, or what it is, because color is, you can't just say, it's all different colors. And that's the trouble with it. You don't know what you're dealing with. You don't know if it's cocaine, which typically you can touch and you can be all right. If it's heroin and you have fentanyl in there, you accidentally ingest a little bit, you're going to tip over and have an overdose right there. That's the dangers of it, because there's not one solid, yes, that's heroin, yes, that's cocaine, yes, that's methamphetamine. Comes in so many shapes and forms. This is the search one we went to, and this is typically what we see in a heavy heroin user. Heroin user, like you were talking about earlier, with the cocaine, what is your typical cocaine? Are they functional? Are they this? Are they that? You can. Heroin users can do the same, but once you're an addict, you get violently sick if you don't continue to have it. So that brings problems we have into the jail system where we arrest somebody who's a very heavy heroin user. If they don't get it again within a certain period of time and they come down, depending on how hardcore they are, how addicted they are, they can become violently sick. And they know it. They don't want to go to jail. Not because jail is no fun, it's because they don't want to get sick. And that's the other trouble with heroin. once you're addicted to it, you gotta keep going. So if you have a good dealer, you gotta keep going. Business is gonna be good. You look for those hardcore users as a distributor, because you know every single day they need to come to you, not only for their habit, and they need that high, but so they don't get sick. Ecstasy, we have not seen a lot of this. Again, doesn't mean it's not there. It's typically for younger users, it's for kids. Our task force hasn't been seeing it. Our school resource officers hasn't been seeing it. Have you seen any up here? Yeah. Quite a few years ago, we were seeing a lot of it. It's still out there though. You read articles on it, it's still there. People are still using it. We don't see the abuse as much as we did, but be aware of it.
I should have said that we have, but
It's been a while. Yep. Something you guys want to look for, they always typically have some kind of brand marking on it. And that designates who made it, where did it come from. If you have, the VW symbol, and hey, the VWs are good, that's what you want. That's what people are going to be asking for. That's what you guys want to look for if you're seeing it in your schools, if you're seeing it in the hallways. You see something like that, hang on to it, put it in a plastic bag, let your school resource officer. Anybody here know what COD is or hear of COD?
You said it on the news, like there was a big bust in the cities.
Yeah, you just saw that. Very
Like
good.
last week or something.
Yep. So we were getting a bunch of this. We still do. It comes in. And this is COD here. It's very, very highly used among Eastern African individuals. Two forms of it are typically the freeze-dried, which is right here, and this is what's being passed around. It's also called grava. The other way is the fresh here, which is very difficult to get over to the United States fresh, because by the time it gets here, the cathinone and caffeine, the drug that is in it, is out of it. But we're seeing it, especially in our African cultures. And the first time I saw it, after working with it, was on National Geographic. It was a show I was watching, and these kids were getting more or less brought into adulthood, and they were whipping them on their back. They're chewing this plant, just chewing it. I'm like, what in the heck is that? And after I learned about it, I realized what it was. When you talk to a bunch of elders about this, they look at it basically as a non-drug from their home communities. They don't see any issue with it. In the United States, it is illegal, and there's two different compounds in it. Right here it tells you, leaves contain the narcotic compound of cathinone. After 48 hours, the more addictive compound degrades to caffeine. That's what we're seeing it as. This picture here, this is a great big box that we seized, and there was 22 of them when we seized it. Inside of it, and they were all about this big, at least 2 feet by 2 feet. And it was being shipped in to an individual who lived in an apartment. They didn't think anything was wrong with it. So that was more or less an education, but they were getting it shipped over. Prescription drugs, this is the number one. This is where you're talking about moving on to other addictions. Abuse and sales have increased over the past 5 years, huge. Highly addictive, similar to heroin addiction, physically very popular among younger populations, often legitimately obtained. Your doctors are the ones that are prescribing it to you. When you're done with those, if you have them at your house, do yourself a favor, don't hang on to those just in case, hey, I have a backache that one day. If you're getting prescribed drugs, you're done using them for that time, get rid of it. The county and many local police departments have prescription drug drop-offs. These are the ones we're seeing, oxycodone, hydrocodone. That's what we're seeing the most as far as abused. You guys here ever take that? You know what it does to you? Nobody's taking any of that? Oh, you guys are all pretty healthy. Morphine, Schedule 2 controlled substance. Xanax, this is, we're seeing a lot. We get this, at least in St. Cloud, because we deal with the school resource officers there. Kids are bringing them into school. They call them bars. They'll break them into different sections. But if you hear your kid or in the hallways talking about bars, it's typically Xanax. This is the fentanyl that I was talking about. A lot of cancer patients, they will be prescribed these patches. You can put them on it. Again, it's a time release. Leslie and I were on a search warrant many, many, many years ago. I don't even know, 2003 probably, out by Richmond. And there were, this was before I even knew what fentanyl was. I don't know if you had a strong understanding of it. Yeah, but and a cancer patient had him. He was selling them to this individual. His house was littered. You couldn't see the floor. It was all patches. And what they'll do is they'll chew on these then to try to get that into their system quicker. Adderall.
Have you seen fentanyl, marijuana?
Fentanyl and marijuana?
Yeah.
No.
So no fear of, like.
I wouldn't say that. Never say
I'm
no
not saying
fear.
it's a fear, but I feel like.
Yes.
Marijuana smell is just it smells.
Yes. I've never seen fentanyl or heard of fentanyl in marijuana. But again, doesn't mean it's not happening. This is your fentanyl that I was talking about. Comes in a powdered form, comes in a liquid form. There's an opioid medication like you were talking about. It's all opioid derivative. Commonly used to prevent pain after surgery. Most used as a patch, like it showed you there. Can also come in liquid or pills form. Currently mixed with heroin. We see a lot of it. Causes the overdose deaths. Package of it typically sells for $20. So not cheap. Carfentanil. This is even. It's still based the same. Sold as elephant tranquilizer. Effects are similar to the opioids such as heroin. Causes nausea, itching. And it can be treated with Narcan. Again, you can get into the Narcan business right now. You're doing pretty good. This is carfentanil. This is what it looks like. This is not a very good photograph up here, but so this is your morphine pill down here, that very, very small one. Then you got your heroin. Then you have your fentanyl, which is 100 times greater than your typically heroin. And then you're going to have carfentanil, which is 10,000 times more potent in the same dosage. So it shows you, if you get carfentanil in there, you're taking that, that's a bad batch of heroin. It's going to kill you.
I don't know if you said that, the only real use for carfentanil, they use it in zoos, and I think the elephant.
Yep, the elephant tranquilizer.
From a law enforcement perspective, that's the most dangerous to use.
It's scary, yeah. Because you get carfentanil the size of a grain of salt. It'll kill you. You're dead. And it's scary. And if you're bored sometime, Google it. There's cops going down across the country because of it. Luckily, a lot of them have access to Narcan, and they're helping themselves out, or their partners are helping themselves out. This K2, we don't see a lot because, again, of what we focus on. But this is prevalent among typically your younger kids. It's a synthetic drug. It's like marijuana. They can still test for it. A lot of people who are on probation who can't use marijuana, they'll try using this, although they do have tests that can pick it up. There's a bunch of different, you can read it here. Sold as a legal alternative to marijuana, cocaine, and ecstasy. Synthetic cannabis, it's a designer drug created by spraying natural herbs with a synthetic chemical. So it can look like marijuana, it can look like your cocaine, it's meant to give you a high. Right there is a sample of it. And that's how it's being sold. You'll see it in the black market, you'll be seeing it coming through the mail like that. And there's some people that we deal with, they love it. They'll take that over marijuana all day long. And that's where they're ordering it online. Again, very, very popular amongst the younger people. Bath salts. This is, anybody here know about bath salts? Not the ones you put in your bathtub. Anybody? When you have a time, go on your phone and Google bath salts or bath salt zombie. Go on YouTube and look at it and what it does for you. Bath salts, again, it's a synthetic drug. And go ahead and look at it now if you want. You won't bother me. It's a synthetic drug that is produced. It raises your temperature very high in your body, increases your heart rate, which causes the temperature of your body to increase. People typically end up taking their clothes off. They have some very, very bad reactions, do some very, very weird things on it. There's many, many cases down in the southern states where they talk about eating people's faces off when they're high on this. So if you get an opportunity, take a look at it. Very dangerous. And again, it can look like pretty much every other drug I've talked about up here, correct? Very difficult to tell you exactly what it is without, like he said, a NIC test, a field test for it. What is it? Not the traditional bath salts used in water. Essential nerve stimulant, marked as bath salts, or plant food, to avoid regulation. Popular among teens. It became illegal in, I think it was 2012, but the way these manufacturers get around it, they just tweak it a little bit. It's like your steroids. They have synthetic steroids, testosterone boosters. How do they legally sell that? They tweak it just a little bit so the FDA doesn't regulate it. Again, you look at that, is that bath salt or is it crystal methamphetamine? You don't know. It looks the same, has the same consistency. The effects, high similar to cocaine, methamphetamine, MDMA, ecstasy, or LSD. Users cannot be subdued. This is the tough part. You know, as law enforcement officers and school resource officers and school teachers and principals in general, they become superhuman while they're on it. Stuff does not affect them. Ingestion methods. Snort it, inject it, smoke it, mix it with food, mix it with drink. Again, what does that look like to most of you? Cocaine. Signs and symptoms, that's the extreme euphoria, very paranoid. Violent behavior, confusion, high blood pressure, sweating. That's when they typically, you see the people, we get the calls as law enforcement all the time. You got the naked guy, naked girl running down Fifth Avenue in Malgermy. And not too many people I know do that unless they're very, very high.
Is that
Yeah. This is just some different names that we've come across. In your schools, concealment. We see this at every single search room. Be aware of it in your schools as well. They're bringing pop cans in. You guys let pop cans come into school? Do you? Yep. Mountain Dew looks like a regular Mountain Dew. You can buy these at any head shop, any place online. They can hide anything in there within reason. We see outlets, fake outlets in the back, speakers. I know I kind of flew through the nth part, but I don't want you guys here all night long listening to this guy talk. Questions you guys have? There's a lot of law enforcement here.
How expensive is one? I mean, like, so as a law enforcement officer, would you recommend that schools have it? I mean, if a school resource officer isn't available, I mean.
I'll tell you what, it's not a bad idea nowadays. Obviously, you have to have training on it. You gotta go through the proper chains, just like we do in law enforcement. With how much is out there right now, it's not a bad idea at all.
But you say it's in every one, or, yeah, is it in every one of our squads?
See, in Benton County, we have it, but we don't have it in our squads. So we have it, in our, at the station, so if we have to test something or something, it's available for the officers, but Benton County.
And Stearns has it all theirs, correct? All their squads?
We used to have it in every squad, and guys are starting to actually carry it on their belt now.
It's a lifesaver. It is amazing. I mean, we have done several individuals twice in 24-hour period. And you gotta be careful that when you bring them up, when you give them and distribute that Narcan to it, a lot of them will get pissed off at you because you just, it kills every effect down. It blocks the receptors in your body and they don't get high anymore. So they just injected or ingested all that heroin and you just put a big blanket over that fire and put it out, but you save their life.
How long do you have, how much time do you have before you have to take it? Narcan? Everything depends on how much.
Yeah, if they're still alive and they're still breathing, their heart is still pumping, it will reverse the effects of it. So if it's gone so long where that overdose is right on the edge, yeah, you could have definitely long-lasting effects from it, but it will cancel out the effects of that heroin in your system once it's ingested.
And is that a prescription that you could, I'm not sure how you get it then. If we were going to do something with that, we have to get,
We got it through Stearns County Public Health.
Yeah,
yeah, so it's a public health conversation.
Correct. Yeah.
And ours is like a Visine spray, so it's dummy, it's cop-proof, it's dummy-proof, so.
We would need that style for us as
You just
well.
unscrew the top and you just spray it up the nose and you wait.
I do believe you can buy it over the counter because
Yeah,
You can
some of the
get it-
dopers.
yeah, every doper nowadays has it.
They can get it at pharmacies, but I don't know, I'm not sure the requirements. Like you don't need a prescription from a doctor, the pharmacist, I believe, can.
The thing
And is there anything if I,
There's
let's
no
just
side
say-
effects, that's the reason. The only thing that will work on is opioid or fentanyl.
so there's
or-
not the problem
So
of
if
giving
you
it,
even think somebody's got this and you spray it and it just turned out to be asthma, nothing will happen to it. There's no counter effect, so. that's
Steve
why
could
it's-
take it right now and it's not gonna happen.
Yeah, it wouldn't do a thing to me unless I was on heroin or something, so that's what, it's kinda nice that way too, because we show up at medical and people are like, I don't know what happens, that's usually what happens, they don't tell us that they were using heroin. A lot of guys just go right to that if it's got the class.
but it'd be different for us at school, because what I'm thinking of it for is if we do searches or something else, that I'm protecting my own employees.
Correct.
That they'd have it.
You're probably
So-
gonna need it more, I would agree with you, more for your employees than your students.
I would guess that would probably be our strongest likelihood,
Yeah. but-
other than the student whose locker we just found it from, but,
And we generated policies regarding it, the carrying of it, the administration can't go out until you've had some, the training's easy, it's like.
Yeah, it's 10-minute training.
but so from that standpoint, let's say Brenda's going through a locker, there's a spray or something, dust comes through it. How long do we have, if it's in the squad and it's 10 minutes away, is that enough time?
Well, Lester and I talked on a guy for quite a while before Blue Cross got there and shot him up. And
Unfortunately, there is no black and,
Yeah.
you're asking black and white.
I know, I want a definite
You want
answer.
black and white, and I'm like that. I like black and white. If yes, then this. If no, then this. There is no set time. If you get it, if it hits you and you ingest it and you go down, it depends. There is no exact set time. Like you said, we've pumped on a guy prior to getting this. We didn't carry it. We pumped on him for 25 minutes before we were able to get Narcan on scene. As soon as it hit him with it, and we got there and his heart was not beating. We continued to pump and pump and pump and pump as his kids and everybody was watching. By the time the Narcan came there, it was about 25 minutes from the time he went down. And it brought him back, and he's alive to this day. So unfortunately, there is no black and white. I like black and white. What else for questions? You guys all want to go clean your driveway. Nothing?
I have a question.
Yeah.
What are some of like the signs that kids may be on certain drugs? I mean, do they act certain ways, or are they
You know what?
sneaky?
On a stimulant, it's, if they're on it, if they're high on it, if they're addicted, if they're gonna be hyperactive, if it's a stimulant, methamphetamine, cocaine, that type of stuff. Marijuana, which you're probably gonna see most, there is no black and white, again, but typically, you know, they may become mellow, they may be sleeping, you may smell it on them. If they're smoking marijuana before school, at least I know when I went to high school, the kids were out smoking marijuana, they'd get busted right away, because you could smell it. That's the biggest thing I think you guys need. You know, if you haven't smelled marijuana, it's very, very distinct smell. And that's something within the school. You work in the school, I'm assuming?
Yes.
Yep. But a parent, yeah, that's something you're gonna wanna see. As a parent, you know, if your kid is starting, my biggest thing is communicate, talk to them, sit them down. What are you doing? Right here, this is great. Bring them to things like this. I appreciate that, you know, because you're gonna see what's going on with it. And yeah, you wanna give your teenagers their room. They wanna spread their wings, they wanna fly. Get involved with them, talk to them. If all of a sudden they have this drastic change in their personality, a drastic change in their moods, it's an indicator. Doesn't mean they're doing drugs, but it could be an indicator. In cop work, we call it maybe a clue. But Steve might not, Sheriff might not. You know,
And you guys in the school, for sure will see that. You'll see a student that seems normal, takes care of themselves, their appearance, their grooming, all of a sudden they start to kind of go downhill. And they might even start associating with the crowd, you know, they start to notice a slip in the grades, they become dissociative, if that's the word to use, or, you know.
withdrawn,
Yeah,
definitely.
withdrawn, things like that. It doesn't mean that it's necessarily, could be depression, could be a mental thing, it could be just problems at home that's going through. But
You
it
don't
could
have
be
that
some
black
other
and
stuff,
white,
so.
but, you know, there are indicators there, such as.
And I'd agree with Jay in communicating as parents, just as tough as it may be, sitting at the dining room table over supper, and just, a lot of times they'll tell you what their friends that might be using drugs or whatever, or
You
something.
probably know what their friends are doing before they'll tell you they are doing it. And if their friends are doing it, again, that's another indicator or a clue. Be cognizant of what they just told you and monitor. But I agree, you know, as a parent, you gotta work with as the majority of you, I'm assuming here, are in the school system, it's gotta be a partnership. Your kids are in school how many hours a day compared to when they're at home? Teachers can't do it themselves, that's for damn sure. Anything else? There we go.
I just don't, and I don't know if you have an answer to, but I don't understand the move in this country to legalize marijuana. I don't get it.
Well, look at it this way right now. This will bring it, for how many years, I can't tell you, I've been a cop since 96, or with city since 96, sworn since 98. If you have a college kid walking down in the college area, who's 18 years old with an open can of Budweiser, that penalty is gonna be a lot greater because one, they're underage consumption, two, they have an open container, than they are if they're walking down there with a quarter ounce of marijuana in their pocket and they're smoking a blunt. So alcohol is legal, 21 and older. Marijuana currently is illegal no matter what your age is. But our system right now, that fine is lower for that marijuana. So I agree with you. I don't know what the trend is. I don't know why it is. A lot of people feel it's the miracle drug. A lot of people feel it's the next enlightenment. That's the thing that's going to cure it all. There's a lot that goes with it. And I'm not going to sway your decision anyway. If you smoke marijuana, that's completely up to you at this point. But I would agree that either one, we need to make it harsher penalties of illegalizing it. Because right now, there's not hardly any penalties. And it's or make it legal and regulate and educate. And I think it's going to be second. I truly believe soon, especially with our governor, we will be legalizing marijuana in the state of Minnesota. Within my career. What do you think, Sheriff?
Well, what is interesting is that they wanna make it legal, but we already have it legal for medical purposes, so we're serving the medical community, and when you think about it, for a doctor to say, go and smoke something, if it's smoke in your lungs, that just seems anti-medical, you know, in general. I will tell you, yes, Colorado has a series of issues. They've got huge grows, and they found that their water's getting contaminated from all the additional fertilizer and things like that that are getting, and whether they're getting dumped legally or illegally or down the drain. So that's a byproduct of something they weren't ready for. They have seen their fatal crashes go up 115%.
But you have to want to
Testing
legalize.
people, so I do think what Minnesota, well, I think what Minnesota.
It's a lot to do with money.
Is slowing down and looking at Colorado, is a big burden on their social services, big burden on their
The hospitals,
hospitals,
everything.
rooms, things like that.
And you
Because
talk
it's
about
also
money.
going up and then the other thing is it's illegally federally, so there's the whole promise was they were gonna get legalized marijuana and all the taxing on that was gonna go to the school districts.
Right.
And that hasn't happened because
There's
they're
so
not
many other
giving
costs.
cash to the schools because the schools can't accept it. You can't put it in the bank and deposit it because those are federally insured and it's federally against the law. So they're just kind of hoarding all this money and they're definitely not seeing what the promise was to put it towards highways and school districts to improve education and stuff like that. The money's still sitting there and, you know, we could tax the heck out of it here, but until the feds say, you know what, you can collect that tax and put it in a federally insured bank and then the bank can, you know, people can then issue the checks through the government and, you're probably not gonna see much of a benefit to legalizing it here.
And like I said, I just read the study that Colorado, for every dollar they raise on that, it causes their state to spend more. So they're going backwards. So hopefully, like Sheriff said, Minnesota does the research, gets ahead of the ball, understands and educates before and if it gets to that point. So, you guys ever need anything? That's my phone number, that's my email address. You got that, you got the sheriff right here. Leslie's more than welcome, I'm sure. I'll put you up there. You got your school resource officer. But I agree, as a community, we have to raise our kids. It's not just one entity here. The social workers, the teachers, the parents, and everything. I appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Jake. Sorry to all of you for asking too many questions.